Hey everyone, welcome back to Dark Souls 2. My name is Tom, and in this episode we are going to be continuing on with Brightstone Cove Seldora. This area has quite a bit of lore surrounding it, but all that lore is quite fragmented. There's things like the Writhing Ruin, Brightstone Cove itself, the mines, and this encampment right here that all have a bit of backstory to them. And for starters, this camp right here was most likely a settlement of these falconers that you see here that have hollowed, and I'm guessing what these falconers were trying to fight off were the spiders and the spider people that were becoming more and more of a problem in Brightstone Cove as the years went on. As the Writhing Ruin took over Brightstone Cove and turned into the Duke's Dear Freya, things just got more and more out of hand in this location. Seldora used to be a flourishing mining town, but that all changed when a sudden parasitic infection swept over the land. This parasitic infection most likely began when Freya became the keeper of the Writhing Ruins. Freya was the pet spider of Duke Seldora. Quite some time after the infection started to spread, the population of Seldora quickly transformed into these human-arachnid hybrids. Those that weren't either transfigured or murdered suffered the curse of undeath and hollowed. And just jumping back quickly to what I was saying about the Writhing Ruin earlier, now this sounds like a place, but that is not confirmed. In fact, Shalqua talks about the Writhing Ruin as if it is a living thing. And what other living thing resides within Freya herself? Seath's soul, or at least a fragment of Seath's soul. As when you kill Freya in New Game Plus, you get the old Pale One's soul, and when you go and use this soul with Ornifex, and you trade that soul for a weapon, you get the Moonlight Blade, which is directly known as the weapon you get from cutting off Seath's tail in Dark Souls 1. Not only this, but we don't know of any other old Pale Ones that are in Dark Souls 1, because as we know, all the New Game Plus souls that you get from bosses, or the Great Soul bosses, are all references to the 4 Lord Soul bosses from Dark Souls 1. Gwyn, Nito, the Witch of Izalith, and Seath. The 4 kings don't really count because they shared part of Gwyn's soul, or rather, Gwyn broke off a part of his soul to give to the 4 kings, so they could share it, and therefore be lords in New Londo. That's all Dark Souls 1 lore though, so we'll get to that when that playthrough comes about. Just remember that every Great Soul boss in Dark Souls 2 seemingly has a link to those that were Lord Souls in Dark Souls 1. As I said before though, the Writhing Ruin isn't confirmed to be a place or a living thing, but I think of it as a living thing, and I think of that living thing as Seath's remains, or a remnant of Seath that lives on within Freya. It says that Freya is the keeper of the Writhing Ruin, and this could mean that Freya is just a host for something else completely, and this something else would most likely be, as I said, the remnant of Seath. This theory is elaborated upon further when we talk to Ornifex down in Lower Brightstone Cove. She says, or at least I think it's her that says this in her dialogue, she says, this Pale One, or the Writhing Ruin, always seems to keep coming back centuries after centuries, and it always takes a new form, or something along those lines. And it seems as if she's talking about Seath's soul that has come back and now become this thing known as the Writhing Ruin that has taken over Freya. And if you're wondering how Seath's soul could have gotten into Freya, remember that earlier on we found the Broken Lord vessel in the bottom of the Majula Mansion. And if we believe what the environment is trying to tell us there, it could be possible that after the Lord vessel was shattered in this land, the souls that were in it, the Lord Souls from Dark Souls 1 that the player put into the Lord vessel to get to Gwyn in the Kiln of the First Flame, most likely went out into the world and found new hosts. And this makes a great amount of sense, since we know that the Old Iron King bears a part of Gwyn's soul in New Game Plus, the Lost Sinner bears part of the Witch of Izalith's soul, not if all of her soul, the Rotten bears Nito's soul, and then Freya bears Seath's soul. The one other thing that the Writhing Ruin could be is the petrified dragon's body that we find in Freya's boss room, but I doubt this is what it is, because everyone that references the Writhing Ruin in Dark Souls 2 in their dialogue references it as something that is living. Now, this is just implied, it's not directly stated, but whenever they talk about it, they speak about it as if it has some sentience, and as if it knows exactly what it's doing. And just think about the name, the Writhing Ruin. It feels as if it's something that would move, or something that is living and writhing around. And this makes infinitely more sense if you think about it as Freya, and Freya being that Writhing Ruin. The ruin being Freya as the host. It's a giant creature that kills anything in its path, or anything that is presented to it. It ruins it. Or it could be just the body itself, speaking as if the body is a ruin, and it's like a relic, and it's something ancient. And then the writhing part is just the fact that it's a spider. Spiders writhe, and it may be also a reference to the fact that writhe is almost like a different word for seeth or seethe, and it could just be a play on words there. But the most logical explanation for the Writhing Ruin is it being Freya, or Freya as the host, or the catalyst for the soul of Seath. This area in the game is probably one of my most hated areas personally, just because spiders just make my skin crawl whenever I see them. The bigger they are, the more my skin crawls, and it's like goosebumps on my arm like 24/7 if I'm around spiders or looking at spiders or whatever. And it's not really a phobia or anything, like I'm not deathly afraid of them. Like I'll put one outside if there's like one in my room, or if like there's one in the kitchen and it's on the tap or something, I'll just put it in like a little box and move it outside, or just leave it alone if it's a really small one or something. But just big spiders like this, I think anyone would be afraid of them, and especially these ones that are in this game, in this part of the level. The dev team just did a really good job with designing these spiders. I mean, just making them as creepy as they did. I mean, spiders are creepy in general anyway, but what From Software does especially well is that they're able to take the creep factor of their games to the nth degree. And they really show it in this level with like the hybrid arachnid people and these spiders here, and just the way that they move, all down to the aesthetic design. And actually, if you didn't notice it, I don't know if it's intentional or if it was inspired, but the spiders in this area have skulls on their backs. They have these images of skulls on their torsos, and these spiders may have been inspired by the Skulltula from the Legend of Zelda series. And I'll put one up on screen here to compare so you can see it. I'm not sure if they were really inspired, but it really seems as if that's the case. Anyway, we're going into this boss here called Prowling Magus and Congregation. This Magus was most likely one of the Aldia warlocks that left to pursue dark magic, as it seems like he's enslaved these hollows and undead here to practice his dark magic on them, and they've turned into this twisted congregation. I've kind of been harping on the worse aspects of Dark Souls 2 recently in the last few episodes, and this boss really just isn't helping to disprove the theory that Dark Souls 2 has a lot of flaws. This boss is mostly, it's a waste of time in my opinion. It's nothing really original or difficult. It's just enemies that they throw at you, and you have to kill those enemies to get through this one area. This didn't even need to be a boss. There didn't need to be a fog door. It could have just been a sub-boss type enemy in this area with no fog door, and no one would be any the wiser, because it would seem as if it was just a normal enemy, as it does to me in this boss fight. And I mean, you don't even get a soul from this boss. I'm pretty sure this is the only boss in the game where you don't get a soul. You just get a Titanite slab. What kind of reward is that for defeating a boss? You just defeated a boss. Here's something that's pretty common to get in late game. You don't get anything unique from it. You don't even get the Aldia Warlock mask. That would have been a better drop than a Titanite slab. Unfortunately, it just seems like this boss was rushed and put in at the last second to fill that gap between the bonfire and the area previous to it. And when I first climbed up here and had a look around, my first thought was just don't fucking move, because if they rush me and then I kill this NPC, then I'm fucked, because, well, he's the only one that can resolve your sin, and when you kill an NPC you get sin. So yeah, it would kind of be a really bad thing. You can revive him and then you can free yourself of that sin, but I think it's just really ironic that you can kill the only guy that can do that.
Something seems to be bothering you. Yes, I can tell. It is written upon your face. You have doubts about something you did. I am Cromwell. Regret, anguish, disillusion, bewilderment. What wonderful gifts they are. Together, they are the essence of life. Don't you agree? But now, you're lost, bewildered by your own actions. You poor little thing. Yes, how tiny and frail are we? But if your heart is yet sincere, your sins will be forgiven. Now is the chance. Demonstrate your sincerity to me.
I'm just gonna buy all the spells that this guy has to offer because, well, I doubt I'll be coming back to him anytime soon, unless I kill an NPC. And the spells that he sells by the seashore, I'm pretty sure you can only get them from him. And I think he sells some that are sold by other NPCs, but yeah, he sells some unique ones as well. And I'm just looking at the White Priest headpiece here, just to see if it had any different lore to the one that I picked up earlier, which was just the priest set. But I think it's exactly the same, and I'll go into that a bit later. So yeah, just buying all these spells here.
Anyone can be forgiven, as long as he is sincere. No matter how terrible the sin. Surely, we all deserve mercy. Yes. Anyone can be. No, sure. We must never forget our sins.
So this guy is known as Cromwell the Pardoner, and in Dark Souls 1 there was someone similar to this guy called Oswald the Pardoner. They both did the same thing, and they both wore the same attire. They are part of the Covenant of Sin, or at least I think it's a covenant, I can't remember. But they both have ties to Sin and Velka, Velka being the goddess of sin. This also somewhat relates to Ornifex as well, but we meet her pretty soon, so I'll go into her lore when we get to that, because as of right now, we are about to run into Creighton and Pate again, and they're having a bit of a fight over who is more of a dick. And honestly, they're both in the wrong, but I'll keep it a secret for who I go with until we get down to them in a second. Both Pate and Creighton are as bad as each other, and it doesn't really matter who you choose because you can get both their items and what they give you if you kill both of them anyway. And if you kill Creighton, you get Creighton's mask, and then you can buy his attire from Malentia later on. And if you kill Pate, you don't get the key to his treasury, but you get his spear and the Ring of Thorns. So kill Creighton first. You can still get all of their stuff, no matter what the outcome of that situation is, except for the engraved gauntlets, which you can only get from saving Pate. And we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it right now.
He's swooned me. Please, lend me a hand.
It's a little hard to see Pate as the good guy now since he's driving his fucking spear into Creighton's torso. But yeah, like I said, they're as bad as each other, so just go with your gut instinct on whoever you want to kill. In my opinion, Creighton is slightly worse because in Mirror, he is known to be a murderer and a psychopath, so mostly here I just stand back and let Pate go buck wild on him.
What misunderstanding could have caused this?
I think it might be because you tried to kill him twice.
Thank you. I owe you my life. My little pied-à-terre lies beyond here. You'll find some of my treasures there. Help yourself to those that suit you. Here, use this key.
Here, use this key to get yourself killed.
Be cautious on your travels.
Okay, so I thought he warned you about the thing that is in the chest when you go to open it. Like, I thought he says be careful when you go in there, but apparently fucking not. I take it back. Pate's an asshole all the way through. He does not once do a genuinely nice thing for you that isn't two-faced, except for warning you about going into that place where he trapped Creighton initially. Initially, I had a bias towards Pate because I thought I remembered the fact that he warned you about that chest, but now that bias is completely gone and I'm neutral again. I mean, Creighton could be a murderer for all I care, and he could have killed Pate, and I wouldn't have minded. So, don't look at me like that, Pate. You know what you did. Hold up, wait for the delayed grunt. There it is. I mean, look at how chill he is about it. It's like I didn't even do it in the first place. Oh well. Too late now. At least this way, him and Creighton are back together. Pate's personality in the end here kind of drives home the fact that he was a bit of a sissy all along, getting you to do things for him. Like, Creighton's coming after him the entire time, but he's getting you to kind of solve all his problems. Like when he sends you to get that reward, the spell that was in the Earthen Peak. And he's like, I don't feel like going to get it. Maybe you should go and get it for me. Or go and get it for yourself, and I'll just let you have it because I don't want to fuck with you, and I don't want to try and kill you for it. I knew that he was just trying to play the nice guy. He wanted that spell, I know it. And I really just can't help making fun of this situation because not only did Pate get himself into it, and Creighton was just responding with basically karma that was for Pate. So it's like the whole storyline of Pate and Creighton is just about karmic justice, and in the end I chose to save Pate anyway, even though he was the one that deserved it. And, I mean, Creighton was a murderer, yeah, but Pate instigated the whole thing. I mean, you don't go up to a grizzly bear and poke it, and then expect nothing to happen. That is basically the way I think about Pate and Creighton's questline. It's basically just a he said, she said argument that you have to decide. Before we continue on to Freya, I will go around this entire area collecting most of the items, except for the one that you have to jump to, because that's just a piece of twinkling titanite, I believe. And over there, where I was looking and shooting that hollow mage, there is an Estus Flask shard, so I need to go get that, and it is really important that I do, because the path that leads to Freya's domain is very dangerous, and it contains a lot of spiders, and those spiders deal heaps of damage if they hit you. So it is best for me if I have as much Estus as possible, even though I'm mostly using life gems anyway, because they're just the easiest healing thing to get at this moment, since they only cost 300 a piece. And I mean, as I've said before, life gems are a huge factor to one of the reasons that Dark Souls 2 has problems, because you can just heal anytime you want. You can top up your HP like I do now, and there is no recourse for that action. I mean, you lose a life gem, but by killing the enemy that made you lose that health in the first place, you can just go and buy another one to replace that. And here, in this room, there is a little secret behind those boxes. You can pull that lever, and that pulls down a chest for you, and you have to jump across to it on this weird angle. I hate jumping across to this chest. I never get it right on the first try. And in that chest is the Southern Ritual Band +1. Now, I'm pretty sure this increases the amount of attunement slots you have by 1 or 2, I can't quite remember. There is the Northern Ritual Band, then the Southern Ritual Band, which is this one. And one of them gives you more spell uses, and then one of them gives you more attunement slots for your spells. But this one was a +1 ring, so that means it is a better version of the Southern Ritual Band, and it will increase the effect of what the original does. I'm just going to do quick cuts to when I get those items that I said before, so we can speed along to getting to Freya, because otherwise it's about 20 minutes of me just going around collecting items, and nobody really wants to see me running back and forth to different places. So I'm just going to go back to this bonfire, and we'll go from there. Down here, this item is a large titanite shard, and having a lot of titanite items in this area makes a lot of sense because it is a mining colony, or at least it used to be. And just having a lot of titanite items in the area is probably the best thing to have, because not only do you know this is an area where you can come and collect those things to level up your weapons, but it makes sense in the lore as well. This is one area where I think they did well with the lore and with the backstory for the area in its entirety, but the one problem that I have with this area is the amount of enemies in it. Like you're about to see in a second, I pick up this item here, which is Petrified Dragon Bone, and 3 spiders just come over that hill and try to kill me. And while I said that there are a lot of enemies in this area, that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. When I go into the bonfire room, there will be about 6 or 7 spiders that drop down from the roof and try to attack me all at once. And that happens every time you sit at the bonfire. and you can't sit at the bonfire again until you kill those 7 in this room here that I don't have the key to just yet. But in a second, I get invaded by an NPC called Bowman Guthrie, and this guy also invades you at the doors of Pharos, at least in the original Dark Souls 2 anyway. I'm not sure if he still does, because I didn't go that far into that level, but he's basically just an NPC that uses 2 Evelyn bows, and he is by far the easiest NPC in this game to deal with, because you just strafe around the arrows and attack in between his shots, and he's so easy to kill, it's not even funny. In fact, I could have pushed him into that giant whirling sand pit if I wanted to, but I'd probably end up going in myself. And for some reason all he drops is Royal Swordsman gloves, which is weird. I have no idea why he would drop that and not an Evelyn, but oh well. Anyway, in this room we have Ornifex, and she has some dialogue for us that is quite interesting, so we'll talk to her right now.
We meet again, kind traveller. This is my workshop. In your tongue, I believe I would be called a blacksmith. I create all manner of equipment, using an ancient technique unique to my people. Normally I only cater to a very select few, but I have a debt to you. I will craft one thing of your choice. My wares are far from ordinary. I am certain that they will please you. I require no payment this time, but you must bring me a wondrous soul. My technique absolutely requires it. I trust you will understand.
At this point in time, we've come across 2 NPCs that can craft boss weapons, the first being Strayed, and the second here being Ornifex. Ornifex does the biggest boss souls in the game, like the wondrous souls that are like Vendrix and the Rotten, and just the great souls in general that we collect throughout the game. She only really caters to the big stuff. If you've played Dark Souls 1, you'll find Ornifex very familiar. She is one of the harpies that was in the Painted World. Now, I don't know if she was actually from the Painted World, but she is of the same species as the crow harpies from the Painted World level in Dark Souls 1. And they are crows that work under the goddess Velka. And as we learned before, Velka is the goddess of sin, and Cromwell the Pardoner was actually part of that as well. It's very unclear how Ornifex has found her way to Drain Lake, but it's very clear that she is of the same kind as the harpies from Dark Souls 1. It's just hard to make a connection there without speculation or theorizing, because the game doesn't state anywhere that she is from that land or that she has any ties to the Dark Souls 1 lore in general. But she has a lot more to tell us about Drain Lake, so we're just going to sit back and listen for a little bit.
The nature of an item is greatly influenced by the soul that was used to create it. They can be tricky to use, but when wielded properly, are extremely powerful. This is what I meant by unique. These wares are not for use by ordinary folk. It's hard to believe now, but this land was once a flourishing kingdom. Its king, Vendrick, came close to unlocking the essence of the soul. What a dazzling soul he surely had. Imagine what I might create with such a powerful soul. It is said that our technique originates from a strange being that inhabited this land. A pale beast that lived long, long ago. We don't even know what exactly it was. If you find a wondrous soul, bring it by for me to have a look. Do you find me strange? You humans are always this way. The way you glare at any unfamiliar creature. That mix of curiosity, fear, and revulsion. No, hardly concerns me. The nature of an item.
Okay, so Ornifex name drops the pale beast from old legend that we've talked about previously, and of course we know who that is because it is Seath from Dark Souls 1. Not only does Ornifex know about it, but it's also referenced in many items as well, including the soul in New Game Plus, so we know that this land definitely has ties to the lore of Dark Souls 1, and that people in Drain Lake know of the legends from Dark Souls 1. So anyone that says that this game doesn't have any ties or relevance to Dark Souls 1 and its lore is absolutely bonkers, because it obviously does, and it's shown so many times throughout this game. Whilst it may be possible that Lordran isn't in the same place as Drain Lake, I think it is, personally, but even if it isn't, the game still has so much relevance to the lore of Dark Souls 1, and people that just dismiss it as having none or having so very little are just being plainly ignorant, or they just don't play the game enough to find those links. But one thing that makes sense if you think about it is the location where Brightstone Cove is. If Lordran is Drain Lake, then it would make sense for Brightstone Cove Seldora to in fact be the Crystal Caves, because as we know, Brightstone Cove was a mining colony, and if we look back to Upper Brightstone Cove in the encampment, you can look out and see crystals scattered all over the landscape. And not only this, but doesn't going down into Freya's den remind you a lot of going down into Seath's den? For me, I know it does. It looks seemingly similar without all the crystals, but the atmosphere and type of design is very, very similar, and I don't think that's accidental. Anyway, this is what I meant when I said there's way too many spiders in this place, and every time you sit at the bonfire, this happens again, and again, and again, until you rest there 12 times, and you make sure that they can't respawn. Artificial difficulty in Dark Souls 2 is one of the worst things about it. I can overlook a lot of the other things, but artificial difficulty and the massive enemies within the game world, they ruin it a bit for me. But anyway, this episode has to come to an end, unfortunately. So once again, thanks for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all next time.